monster. We'll pick it up right from here and go from there. So, hi. My name is CohhCarnage, and I'm an avid player and fan of this game, Rimworld. And today we're going to show you a little tutorial on how to get started, how to kind of set up your colony, go over some basic things. Now, I want to point out before we begin that this game is deep, this game is big, and this game has lots of curveballs. Most of which, I should say, you will not see today in this. What you're going to see today in this tutorial is a real basic way to get started, to get your initial colony set up, to get some defenses up, to get power going, to get food going, to get housing up. And again, what you're going to see today is just a way to do it. There's lots of different ways to do it. So we will kind of go from there. So the first thing, and I'll actually start at the very beginning here. In this game, you have to create a world. And creating a world is pretty easy. All you have to do is basically just generate a random terrain field, which is this. This is basically a huge collection of different maps that you can go to. These different colors represent different parts, different biomes. So like these are, you can see up here under biome, temperate forests are here, we've got deserts here, tundra, boreal forest. There's all sorts of different places you can start. The little icons in the map also represent how mountainous or hilly the terrain is. And yeah, it's a really cool way to kind of vary your playthrough, especially once you've kind of gotten established with the game. Once you've created your world, you go and start your new colony. The way this kind of works, there's two different kind of difficulties for the game. The first one is picking your storyteller. The top one is Cassandra Classic. She's going to have kind of a slow ramping up difficulty where, you know, you'll start only getting a few enemies in your camp, but as you keep going, they'll get more and more dangerous, you know, and also more catastrophic things happen later in the game, that kind of thing. The next one is Phoebe Chillax, or Phoebe, I guess, and she is kind of the easy storyteller. She gives lots of time between major events, lets you recover from major incidents and problems. So she is definitely who I recommend to start with, especially if you're just trying to learn the game and things of that nature. The last guy is the hard one. This is Randy Random, and he just does random shit all the time. He is definitely the most difficult storyteller, and he can also do random events on top of each other. So you may get an eclipse, which shuts down all of your electric stuff, including your turrets. Then, during that eclipse, or right before it happens, you may get an explosion in one of your battery things, which wipes out all of your power and all your batteries. And then you get attacked by a horde of pirates, without any turrets, while you're dealing with a fire. It's an absolute mess. Anyway, after that, you can pick your difficulty down here. Base Builder is kind of the easiest one, or Free Play is the easiest one. It's basically just like a sandbox. Base Builder dramatically decreases the potency of enemies, so, and also threats in general. Rough is, you know, threats are quite dangerous, no bonuses to colony mood or crop yields, and it just gets, you know, harder and harder. So for this one, we're going to do Base Builder, just again, so I can kind of show you. Actually, you know what we'll do Rough. We'll keep it a little bit interesting. I'm going to regret this later. Mark my words. But yeah, so we're going to do Phoebe Chillax, and we'll do Rough. Once you pick your difficulty, hit Next, and then the world, which is the one we just did here, you just select that world, and now you pick a crash site. Now, in this game, the premise is that you are a group of 3 colonists that have survived a crash onto a Rimworld. The point of the game is to not only survive and build your base, but ultimately build a spacecraft to go back into space and get home. That's kind of important because it does mean there is an actual end to this game in almost all cases. Now, what we're going to do normally is I would pick, like, you know, a desert biome, or maybe, you know, some kind of weird challenge biome, a jungle or something. But for this tutorial, we're going to pick first of all temperate forest, because that's kind of the easiest. It's kind of the most it's kind of the most general. It has a bunch of trees, lots of animals, the growing seasons are good. And we're also going to pick a mountainous region, because that's also going to help us set up our base a little bit. Now, another thing you have to pay very close attention to in picking an area is the growing period. Because if you pick an area that has a very small growing period, then you're in for a pretty rough time, especially when you have to get food. You need to be doing things like researching hydroponics early, breeding animals potentially, working on taming animals. Also, hunting is going to be a big deal. So one of the things you can do to start your first colony that I recommend is picking something that's year-round. That's probably the easiest for growing periods, and definitely one I recommend. Another thing we're going to do before we start is go down to Advance, and this is going to let us pick the size of the map. I generally pick a large map. That gives us the most area to kind of find a good spot to build, the largest area to do kind of special events and resources that may pop up on the map, lots of ore, stuff like that. Now, it is important to keep in mind, though, that the larger the map, a lot of times the more difficult your game would be. And there's a few reasons why that is. One big reason, for instance, is there's two specific types of events, a siege event and also a spaceship debris event. And both of those can be very difficult if they're very far from your base. So, for instance, if we pick a Ludicrous, if we pick like this one right here, and we settle in the bottom right of the map, and there's a siege that's in the very top left of the map, it may take an entire day or close to it for our armies to get over to it just to attack it. And if that happens, by the time they get there, they're tired, they're having mood issues, and all of a sudden, you know, they fired 5 shots and they're complaining about being out too long. And then you're in a big problem. So I usually stick around the high, mediums, or low, large. We'll do a high, medium for now. And that kind of gives you a nice big area to work with, but at the same time, it's not absolutely huge. So next is this part. Now, real quick, I'm going to go close this door because my birds are trying to add to the tutorials. Love you guys, but not right now. There we go. Although chirp, 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 chirp is a very good point. All right, now, this is where it really kind of picks up here. And what we're going to do here is we are, for this tutorial, going to roll guys that are decent and also fill in gaps in our colony. Really how you do this is all dependent on what kind of playthrough you want. Now, a lot of people just go start. They get to this point and they just hit start. And that gives them basically 3 random colonists. They can have all sorts of problems or issues or good things. And it's just totally random. However, what we're going to do is we are going to make sure we have a decent starting group. And we do that by hitting this up here. So what we'll do is we'll hit random a few times. And we'll take a look at our guys and see how they look. Now, this guy is great with animals, a decent shooter, good at medicine, cooking, and construction. So this guy could do all sorts of things. He's not incapable of anything. He's healthy. He's not old. But the problem with this guy right here is lazy. Natalia is a little bit lazy. Global work speed -20. That can be a big issue, especially early. So we're actually gonna keep going. And basically, what you want to do is if you're getting a good starting colony and you want it to be really strong, then you just keep doing this until you get 3 colonists to kind of fill in all your gaps. And we'll kind of go over those gaps as we make these guys. So this guy's really good. He'd be a great miner. He's too smart, which means he has a higher mental break threshold, but he can learn really fast. Psychically sensitive, which can be really rough for some of the events. And aesthetic, which means she gets a mood loss if she has a bedroom that's too impressive. She is actually okay. We could use her as a grower and a miner. Generally, you don't want to do those together because those are 2 things that tend to happen a lot together. So it's generally a good idea to have 2 different people doing that. But in this case, I think it may work. So we're going to go ahead and name this first person after one of our mods. It's a female colonist, so we'll name this one Pal May. And there's Pal May, our first colonist. So now we have someone that can do growing and mining. So when we do our next person, we won't really need to look at those as much. So let's go ahead and, wow, it's a really high medicine score. Interesting. This is actually a really good dude. I think we'll take this. Decent age, steadfast, which means -5 break threshold, and cold tolerant. No health or relationship issues. He's incapable of violent, which means he can't fight, but that's okay. We can deal with that. So we'll take this guy here and give ourselves a really good doctor. Who should we name this guy? We'll name this one, a Shap. There we go. All right, so now we have someone that's really good at medicine, someone who's good at animals. We've got a grower and a miner. We need a good chef, someone who can cook well. Do we have a good shooter? No, and we need a really good marksman. So the thing we're really going to be looking for right now is a good shooting score. That's probably going to be the most important. We need to have a little bit of defense. That's also going to bleed into hunting, which means they're also a decent hunter. Now, see, that's a good shooting score, but incapable of dumb labor, skilled labor, caring, social, artistic. Yeah, no. You want to be careful with the incapable ofs. Always keep an eye on that. Also, the traits can be really important too. that's okay, but you really don't want someone capable of hauling early. And capable of intellectual, artistic, and crafting. Careful shooter is a kind of a bad perk, though. Aiming time plus 25%. But the shooting accuracy is a lot more. Psychically hypersensitive. Ooh. You know, we can try this guy. We can try this guy. His name is Frank. Damn it, Frank! But yeah, let's go ahead and name this guy. Danny. Danny B. Prop Danny B. Perfect. All right, so this is our first setup here. Something else that's kind of fun, by the way, before you begin, and this is something really cool to do. I've already read most of these, so I don't really do it too often, but if you go over the backstory, you can actually see the backstory and adulthood stories of each of these people. Medical student, medical soldier, and each of these actually influence a lot of the stats that these characters are. It can be really fun and a good way to kind of get into the game if you like that kind of stuff. All right, so without further delay, let's do it. I wish you the best of luck, mods. You're all going to die.
Fatality.
Okay. The three of you awake in your crypto-sleep sarcophagi to the sound of sirens and ripping metal. You barely get to the escape pods before the ship is torn apart. Sometime later, you land on this unknown Rimworld. As pieces of the shredded ship fall around you, you start to make plans to survive. All right. So, one of the...
Losing all the privileges. All of them.
What is she doing?
She keeps on
Little tiny
trying
Siri
to get
cam?
the birds. Where are we putting this?
I'm doing a tutorial right now for YouTube, Lena.
Sorry.
Yeah. I'll take care of that later. So, one of the first things we're going to do here is look at our map. Now, the first thing I did, you can see they're moving around normally. First thing I did is hit space, and that's going to pause the game. That'll give us a second to kind of look around the map and see what we're doing. Man, this is a huge mountain region on our left here. Huge mountain region. Okay. That's pretty good. We also have this right here, which is a geothermal vent. We can utilize that later for power. Let's go ahead and look up here. Got a nice little herd of boar there. We've got some muffalo over there. That'll be good hunting if we need it. So we also have two different geothermal vents down here as well, but that's going to be a really exposed location. Enemies can spawn in all over the map, so you kind of want to get into an area where we can funnel them together if you can. This would probably be the best area to set up in, but there's no geothermal vents nearby, and we want to kind of look forward with that kind of stuff. I'm thinking we'll start here. I'm thinking we'll start there, although we could start up here too. Oh man, there's a lot of good options here. We also want to make sure we stay near kind of a large open area so we can do farming. So this would be the most defensible area, building back in here. Because then we could just set up turrets out here. We could also do it back here. We kind of go right in here. Let's do that. Let's start right in here. We'll kind of ignore this area up here for now, and we'll kind of start going in here. So, now that we've decided on an area, this is when everything kind of gets started. So, before I begin, we're going to kind of go over a little bit on what this is. So, first down here is your architect menu. This is going to be like your main menu for almost all the stuff you're going to be doing. There we go. In the game. You can give orders, you can build different things, you can put down instructions, you can set zones, all sorts of different things. And it's a menu you're probably going to be spending most of the time in. However, before we dive too much into that, this menu is just as important. And also is kind of where we get started in terms of telling our guys what to do. There's a little AI that runs on every colonist. And this window dictates how that AI is going to function. So when you open it first, it's just a bunch of check marks and boxes. These boxes represent A, what the person can do, and B, how good they are at it. So if the box is gold, that means they're really good at it. As it gets brighter white, that means they're better and better at it. You can also kind of faintly see here in the corner if they have this little flame next to them. And for reference, if a character has a flame next to something, that means that as they do that thing, they will get better at it faster. So it's good to keep people that have these little flames doing those things, because that means they will progressively get better at those as time goes on in a faster manner than if they were to do nothing else. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to work. And this button up here, manual priorities, is very important. You want to click this first. And what that's going to do is, instead of just on or off, it's going to make it so you can actually set priority numbers 1 through 4 and give your colonists a kind of like little mini cascade of decision, like a little decision tree. So, for instance, we have this guy down here who is a grower. And actually, real quick, I'm going to pop my cam off for this. We've got this guy down here who's a grower. So what we're going to do is click that down to 1, because we want him focusing on growing. We want him to do all the growing before he does anything else. Once the growing is done, we're going to click mining to 2, and that means that once all the growing's finished, then he'll go back to his row, look for number 2s, he'll see mining, and then he'll go and mine everything he can. If everything is mined, then he'll look for 3s, which he has lots of 3s, and kind of randomly pick one of these to go. Now, in addition, I say randomly, but that's not really true, because if you see up here, the higher priority options are the ones on the left, and the lowers are on the right. So, for instance, if a fire breaks out, we want everyone helping out. Now, some people say not to do this because, you know, there's all sorts of reasons you may want some people not fighting fires. They may not like fire. They may be really weak or slow, and in that case, it's probably more dangerous for them to fight fire than not. But in our case, we're going to go and set everything to 1. Now, if we set these to 1, and we also set someone to 1 on research, which means they'll research if there's something to research all the time, because firefighting is on the left, they will prioritize a 1 firefighting over a 1 research. And that's kind of how it works down the whole row. You can see up here with the higher priority and lower priority. So that's important to keep in mind when you're working with priorities as well. Other things that we're going to set on 1 is doctor. So whenever someone is hurt, then a Shap will drop what he's doing and go try to doctor them. That just makes sense. Another thing we can do is drop construction on all of them to 2. This means that if something needs to be built, at least one of them should hopefully go out and try to do it in a somewhat timely manner. Outside of this, once we get cooking up, we'll work on getting cooking. Handling is animal handling. We can set that to 2, but we don't really need that too much early. And actually, I'll just go down the list real quick. Flick means flicking switches, which is the manual act of a person going over and flicking a switch like a turret or an electric junction. You want to have flicking pretty low on everyone, and that way just the closest person will go do it. Wardening is interacting and feeding and basically socializing with prisoners. Handle is animals. Cooking is preparing meals. You always want to eat prepared meals if you can, and we'll get into that a little bit more later. Hunting is hunting. You set hunting in the orders menu. Construct is constructing. Repair is repairing broken or worn out equipment. Equipment can just wear out since the last couple patches, so you do want to have some people set on repairing. Growing is growing plants and also hydroponic stuff. Mining is mining. Plant cutting is like cutting or harvesting plants as designated. I think that also does cutting wood when you cut wood down, but I'm not entirely sure. Smithing is creating weapons and tools from raw materials, either as a blacksmith or by machining. Lots of crafting stuff later in the game is going to be this here. Tailoring is, again, making apparel from raw materials. Art is art. Craft is all sorts of crafting, including stone cutting, smelting, and stuff. Hauling is really important. Hauling is moving stuff around the map. So I generally set hauling, especially early, kind of as 2, so that way we can kind of clean our area up, and we'll go more into that in a minute. Cleaning is keeping the place clean. Keeping the place clean is very important to keeping people happy. So having a dedicated cleaner later is definitely something that's recommended. And then researching is actually gaining new tech from building various different technology, kind of branching out from the research benches, which again, we will do that later. So what we're going to do now is kind of decide where we are going to build, which you already did kind of down here. And one of the first things we want to do is make a stockpile, and that's going to tell our guys to basically bring all of the equipment and gear to that area. So we'll put the stockpile right up here for now. And when you go into a stockpile, I'm not going to get too much into this, but you can decide everything that goes into it. In this case, we just want everything. Just move all of our stuff to that stockpile. And that's exactly what they're going to do. So now that we have a stockpile established, we're going to want to go back to here. Now, if you notice, everything has these red X's over them. That means that's basically telling your colonist, do not interact with this item. What we're going to do in this case is we want them to interact with everything. So by double clicking on something, you can select all of that item type in the area. we'll double click on the steel. You can use that. The silver, you can use that. Silver's like money in this game. You want to get most of it. The wood, you can use that. Components, which you need for a lot of mechanical things, you can use that. Food you can use. Med kits you can use. And then finally we have these weapons down here that we're going to want to establish. If you open up your character, we can find our good shooter, which is Danny. Danny's going to get the rifle, and we can select Danny, right-click on the rifle, and equip that for him to go get it. Using the comma and period key, you can move through your colonist with this open, which is really handy for finding different things, or finding people quickly. Shooting is 0 for Palme, which is better than... I mean, she can at least pick up a gun, so we'll have her pick that up. And then this, I don't even think a Shap... Yeah, a Shap is incapable of violence, so even though I think he can pick this up, he won't actually use it. Now when we unpause the game, you'll see they'll go and pick up their equipment. Now as you see, the first thing that Danny, or Shap and Palme did is after they picked up their guns, they immediately fell back on their decision tree and started hauling. So you can click on these guys and see they're bringing the items that we marked over to our stockpile, which is exactly what we wanted to do. That's perfect. Another cool thing to talk about real quick